What is up YouTube, or rather what is out YouTube? That's a ham-fisted segue. I'm PCGN's Dave, and this is a look back at the techgasm that has been 2017 so far. So what is out? It's hard to tell because there's been so much PC tech released this year, and we're not even 2/3 of the way through yet. Normally we'd save this sort of year in review shizzle for just after Christmas, while everybody's still full of port and cheese. But there's been such an unprecedented number of tech releases this year. To try and fit 2017 as a whole into a single video short enough for your withered attention spans would be next to impossible. I mean, I've never seen such a frantic spunking of tech releases out into the market. What happened last year? Anyone remember? Is there anything of worth noting? No, nothing. Nobody released any important hardware, nothing dreadful happened, nothing awful or terribly self-destructive occurred at all. As far as I'm aware, no one did anything of note. But then I was full of port and cheese for most of it. But what about 2017? Well, there's been lots of this.
World first Vega Nano. This is the beautiful Vega RX.
AMD's EPYC processor.
120 teraflops.
The GeForce GTX 1080 Ti. Using the Ryzen mobile processor.
This is Ryzen Threadripper.
A fair chunk of this.
More threads.
Cores and threads.
Better performance. Twice as much cores.
Really fast.
Fast.
It is a masterpiece on many levels, arguably the most expensive computer project the world's ever done.
Faster than a Titan X.
Faster load times and game launches.
A whole load of this.
Teraflops, teraflops.
Teraflops.
Teraflop card.
Petaflops.
And some guy saying this.
Megatasking.
But 2017 actually started out incredibly boring, with an altogether entirely Intel processor release. Intel's Cable 8 processors shuffled onto the scene like they weren't sure why they'd been invited to the party and looked kind of embarrassed to be there at all. There was pretty much nothing of interest worth noting about these Cable 8 processors. They were only the mildest of updates over Skylake and didn't really do anything that interesting. They weren't necessarily bad, they were just a bit boring. Though they did release a K-series Core i3, which was overclockable, hyper-threaded, should have been really exciting, but it was overpriced, outperformed by cheaper Pentium processors, and at the end of the day, it's just a dual core. Shit got real in March though, as AMD produced their first new CPU architecture in years, the Zen-based Ryzen processors. The 8-core, 16-thread chips were massively undercutting Intel and outperformed them with their multi-threaded Wiles 2. There are still a few questions about the gaming value of these 8-core processors. They're still quite expensive and can actually be outperformed by cheaper Intel chips. So it wasn't until the Ryzen 5 chips came along later that AMD really nailed the CPU game. Deliberately interrupting AMD's CPU renaissance though, up pipes Nvidia at the Game Developer Conference and goes, look, I've got this real Darren Brown mind control shit to show you. You know how we've got the fastest graphics card ever, right? Well, we're gonna release a new one. It's even faster. So they whip out the 1080 Ti, tell us it's faster than the $1,200 Titan X, and it's about half the price. So we're all like, oh wow, that's really good value then, isn't it? £700 graphics card. So a little financial misdirection, and we're all going, yay, that's great. Then Jensen fades back into the darkness, goes, that's your lot. I'm going to go back to getting robots to drive cars and learn how to play hockey.
It's literally learning randomly. And once it starts randomly learning, it gets positive feedback every time it does something good.
So then AMD released the Ryzen 5 6-core processors. So these 6-core processors, 12 threads, brilliant gaming chips. They honestly blew me away and knocked the K-series Core i5s out of the park when it comes to being the go-to gaming processor. Suddenly I could no longer recommend anyone buy as a straight quad-core processor anymore when they can get a CPU that's the same price, gives you pretty much the same level of gaming performance and has 3 times the thread count as the Core i5. And that's going to keep you going for next-gen gaming for the next couple of years. So then AMD turned their focus back to graphics cards again and started talking about their new 500 series GPUs. And we all got kind of excited because we thought they were going to go on about their Vega architecture, but no. In the end, the 500 series just turned out to be the 400 series with slightly tweaked clock speeds and some new badges and some new names. So that was pretty boring, pretty unexciting. But they were assuring us that Vega was still on track for a summer release. And then some weird rumours started floating around about processors again, that AMD were going to pull an Intel and start jamming their server chips into a more consumer-facing package. So everybody was just like, so AMD, what's that behind your back? What's that? It's like, that massive lump of silicon you're hiding.
This is Ryzen Threadripper.
Threadripper. Threadripper. That's what they're calling it. That's genuinely the name of this processor range, Threadripper.
And this is by far my favorite product name of all of our products.
Whatever. Forgetting the ridiculous name for a second, these are 16 core, 32 threads, massive, genuinely massive processors, but for the same price as Intel's 8-core chips. So that cued some serious Intel panicking and some interesting engineering meetings, I'm sure. I would have loved to have been in that first meeting where Intel found out about Threadripper. Not just about the stupid name, but the 16 cores and 32 thread business too. So when AMD first released Ryzen, Intel were talking about it like it was some barely significant release. It wasn't going to touch them, nothing. And then up pops AMD with this stupidly named processor that suddenly makes their $1,700 10-core chip look like an ARM processor. So what does Intel do? They take center stage at Computex in Taiwan and announce their first ever Core i9 range of processors. And guess what? We've got an 18-core processor now. Yeah, 2 more cores than Threadripper. So there. And then with a straight face, they turn up at an E3 and Intel tell me that this was the trajectory all along. We've always meant to have an 18-core processor in this range. Have we explained megatasking to you? Yeah, right. After years of sandbagging and barely iterative processor releases, they expect us to believe they were always going to jump from 10 cores to 18 cores this generation. They couldn't even release the 18-core, 16-core, 14-core, 12-core chips at the same time as the rest of their Skylake X range.
And we'll be launching our 12, 14, 16, 18-core parts from August through to October.
They were always going to be released later, right? Yeah? But that wasn't the end of Intel's WTF summer. They also released a pair of hobbled Kaby Lake X chips that were meant to go in the exact same X299 platform as the expensive multitasking chips. Except they can't take advantage of the expensive motherboard, and they don't offer anything above the tedious chips that they released back in January. Weird. Want to step in here, NVIDIA? Provide some distraction from Intel's awkward summer? Nah, we're busy building holodecks, and look, these robots, they've learned how to play golf now.
Yeah! Good job.
So, just after AMD launched their final Ryzen CPUs of the year, the Ryzen 3 quad-core budget gaming processors, AMD finally launched Vega, their first proper high-end graphics card in 2 years. But it's also the biggest architectural change they've made since their graphics core Next chips were launched about 5 years ago now. But when we say high-end, unfortunately we're not talking about the same sort of fastest graphics card ever territory that we usually see when NVIDIA toss out a Ti or a Titan card. The top-end Vega 64 is a bit of a strange one. When it comes to legacy DirectX 11 games, the sort of things that make up most of our Steam libraries, it struggles to perform at the same level as an overclocked 1070. That's not good. But Vega is a forward-looking design, targeting DirectX 12 and Vulkan as the modern APIs that it wants to nail. And in that, it does really impressively, outperforming a GTX 1080 in most DX12 games. But then pricing is a bit weird. The $500 launch price looks like it might actually have only been a launch price, and when stock finally does appear in the shops again, it sold out within 20 minutes, it might be a lot more than $500, potentially pricing the top-end Vega out of relevance. So we've already seen a huge amount of tech released in 2017. So what's next? Despite AMD releasing their 16-core Threadripper chips in August, Intel still haven't released their 18-core processors. So the $2,000 18-core 36-thread chip, that's not going to be out until the end of September, so we've got that one to look forward to. More relevant is Intel's 8th generation core processors, the Coffee Lake chips. So these are going to be interesting for one reason, well, two extra cores. So instead of the quad-core 8 threads, we're going to get 6 cores, 12 threads, and interestingly, the Core i5 is going to get a straight 6-core chip. That could end up being the go-to gaming chip at the end of the year. There's also the vaguest chance that NVIDIA might release their Volta cards this year. I mean, they won't, but there's the slightest chance. They've already announced their professional level cards and they've started shipping those, but TSMC have just announced that they're entering volume production for the 12nm chips that are going to make up the next generation of NVIDIA graphics cards, and they're going to start those going at the end of this year. So who knows? So there's still potentially a whole lot more tech to come in this year of our Lord 2017, and with PCGamesN, you'll be right up there with it. So if you like what you've heard, like what you've seen, give us the old like and subscribe, and check back for more video goodness in the future. Thanks for watching.